Welcome to Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Linda Anderson, and I created this podcast as a space for real, heartfelt conversations with people who are reflecting, evolving, and boldly stepping into what's next. This podcast was born out of my own journey through seasons of loss, transition, and transformation, and my belief that healing happens when we come together to share our stories. My hope is that these conversations will inspire you to pause, reflect, and find courage as you move forward in your own life. Today's conversation is about voice, heritage, leadership, and the courage to return to what first made you come alive. My guest is Jamie Okh, a civil rights leader, strategic communications expert, former federal investigator with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and now founder and creative director of Stories by Jamie. For more than a decade, Jamie worked at the intersection of public policy and human dignity, investigating systemic discrimination, enforcing civil rights laws, and negotiating institutional change, and serving as a steady voice in high visibility environments. During 2018 and 19, federal government shutdown. She became a national spokesperson for federal employees and their families, helping the country understand the real human impact of policy decisions. But long before federal service and media appearance, Jamie was a storyteller, a published poet at 12 years old, raised in a rich Russian heritage, shaped by the stories and strength of her grandmother. Today, she is also the mother of 2 young boys, raising the next generation while stepping boldly into a new creative chapter rooted in imagination, empathy, and public trust. This conversation is about integrating strength and softness, justice and joy, public leadership and personal legacy. It's about what it means to move forward without leaving your roots behind. Jamie, I am so honored to have you here today.
Thank you so very much. And honestly, it's hard for me to not call you Principal Anderson because you were my principal.
That's okay. I'm here now to hear about your story and sharing with the public. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Jamie, my first question to you is, when you think about your Russian heritage and your grandmother's stories, what values shaped you most?
Courage, big time courage, because what my grandmother and her family went through to escape from Ukraine and end up in Uzbekistan to save their lives took massive amount of courage. We must have courage and be strong, and we must also not cower in the face of evil. We must be strong and determined to survive, and not just survive, but thrive, and always hope for a better day. That was always her value, was always have a good mood. Always have a good mood. You know, you need to live in the present and you need to be happy. Even though she went through such horrible, horrible ordeals, she still remained strong, mentally, physically, emotionally, and her soul always radiated this sense of strength. And so I really take that very seriously myself.
I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because to the listeners, I want to say that's how we move forward. We hear all these stories, we watch all these stories, we live these stories, and that helps us move forward. So on that note, though, Jamie, I said in the intro, you were a published poet at 12 years old. What did that young storyteller understand about the world that still lives in you today?
That poem that I won and it was published was actually a very heavy poem. It was during a time when we were learning about the Holocaust.
Mm,
And my poem is from a first person perspective of somebody trying to hide from being killed.
oh,
And the reason why I won that poetry contest was because whenever it was read, people felt almost like I was the person that was trying to hide. And to be honest with you, because of my grandmother fleeing from the Nazis, I mean, she literally was hiding from the Nazis during the Holocaust. It was almost as if it was me instead of her.
mm.
And I don't know how that happened at 12. I don't know how that happened, but I will say something that is still, very true today, unfortunately, is that, you know, humans do really bad stuff to each other out of hatred. And it's so dumb to hate somebody else just because of their religion, their race, their national origin, the color of their skin, or whatever it is that, distinguishes them from others. We have no control over how we are born upon this planet. We have no control over what religion we're born into, what skin color we're born with, right? The only one who does is God or the universe or whatever the source, whatever you may believe, right? I believe in God. So I say it's God, right? And I believe very strongly that all of us were made in God's image and that we are all equal. And to say that one people is better or less than another, in my opinion, is like kind of blasphemous because if you believe that we were all made in God's image, then how can you say that somebody with black skin or somebody with yellow skin or somebody who's Jewish or somebody who's Muslim is less than? It's wrong. So I don't know how I knew that all at 12, but it still follows me today. And I say this on my social media quite a bit because being a civil rights investigator, I have seen such hateful, behavior in humanity. And I tried with all my might to do what I could in that role. And now I want to continue to help try to dismantle this racism or whatever ism, okay? Because truly we are all human beings and we are stronger together. All of these wars that are happening, it is because of the divisions. If we all believe that we are all equal and everybody deserves life upon this planet Earth and nobody is subhuman or less than, which gives people the justification to kill, really. We would have peace around the world. And honestly, who doesn't want peace? I want peace. You want peace, right? I'm pretty sure all of your listeners want peace. And that comes from your own inner peace. And to have inner peace means not to have hate in your heart. That's what I believe.
So as I'm listening to you, Jamie, I know your two sons, and I'm thinking of them, and you have these two sons that you're raising. So what does it mean though to carry your heritage forward while raising these two young boys of your own?
You know, it's been complicated because of the times we live in. I grew up in a golden time, I believe, where being American, okay, I'm American, right, meant freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and it meant this like sort of safety or security to be who you are without being punished for it. So I was very openly Jewish. I didn't fear talking about being Jewish or bringing, Jewish things to school or talking about Hanukkah and things like that. Now, we fast forward to today, and all of the rise of anti-Semitism has caused things to become different for me and my family. To make sure that my kids know who they are, okay, and move that heritage forward, not only the Russian heritage, but the Jewish heritage, hasn't been easy. We live in a time right now where my 10-year-old, who is a little YouTube star, he wants to be a little YouTube star, okay? Uh, Sometimes he has me videotape him. And one time I was videotaping him on his new scooter, and I said, "Wow, what a great Hanukkah present, right, Sammy?" And he said, "Mom, why did you say that? Turn that off, do it again, and don't say Hanukkah. I don't want people to know that I'm Jewish." I'm like, wow. That was kind of a knife in my heart. Um, at home, we practice. We go to Chabad, which is this beautiful community full of beautiful people who we all practice and celebrate Judaism. He is 100% happy and proud to be Jewish. Same with Raphael, my 5-year-old. But right now, it's almost like an instinctual thing. Like Sammy didn't understand that for me. Like I didn't tell him, "Oh, don't tell anybody that you're Jewish." That was like a almost like I felt like a survival mechanism, like from ancestral DNA, to survive at a time when perhaps being Jewish is dangerous and you want to not let people know and you want to be very assimilated, which my family has done. My family, when they came to America, they assimilated so much that, I mean, many of my cousins who are like older than me, but around my age, they don't even speak Russian very well, if at all. I speak Russian fluently. So that's kind of interesting
Yeah,
that the American born girl
yeah.
speaks Russian fluently, but the ones who were born in Russia, they assimilated so much because it's about survival. It really is. And to carry our heritage forward, I feel has been truncated a little bit because of this sort of friction of wanting to educate and celebrate and be openly and fiercely free to be who you are versus sensing a danger for being who you are. And the interesting thing is without saying anything to my kids, they themselves have picked it up, and so it's a very unique experience, but I want to make them feel better. I want to make them feel safe. And one thing that I have been very inspired to do is to write stories about my heritage, our heritage, to write the story of my grandmother and that whole entire side of the family, evacuating from Ukraine and coming to Uzbekistan while almost dying from starvation and frozen oceans and being shot at and bombed at and all of that. I feel very this calling, if you will, to put out more into our mainstream world about Russians, Ukrainians, and Jews, and that mix,
Mm.
because I really don't see very much of that out there. And let me tell you, we're a really fun, cool, colorful group of folks. It's very entertaining. And I believe that if I am proudly and openly saying we're Jewish and I'm not scared, then my children won't be scared.
True. I so appreciate you sharing all that, Jamie, because the title of this podcast is Moving Forward Conversations on Culture, Identity, Healing, and Hope. And I think you talked about all of it in that conversation. So I really appreciate you sharing everything. Jamie, another question I have for you is you spent over a decade investigating discrimination in housing and lending. What did that work teach you about courage?
Oh my gosh, I had to be so brave. To be to be honest with you, it taught me that sometimes when somebody is yelling and screaming at you, like a mayor of a city, which happened to me, okay, when I investigated the city of Lancaster many, many moons ago, which I can talk about openly because it's public now and it's over, okay? But the city of Lancaster's mayor at the time, I don't know if he still is, I will never forget that man. He looked like the colonel from KFC. And he was so bombastic and he was intimidating. He intimidated me so much. He was physically large. He was so loud and he was so confident that he was right. Okay. And I was a junior at the time, a junior little beginner investigator, okay? And I was there with the branch chief, Jesse Webster, who I absolutely adore and respect. Unfortunately, he passed away, so God rest his soul. But Jesse Webster and a few others. And Jesse looked at me because I was shaking before going into this meeting. This was my meeting, and I've never done this before. They just threw me into the deep end. That's what happened at HUD. That was my training. Okay, you got to deal with this crazy mayor. And so, and I looked at Jesse and I'm like, I'm scared. I think I'm really scared of him. And he said, why? Why are you scared of him? You are the one with the power, Jamie. You are the one with the badge. And you need to wear that badge not just around your neck, but you need to wear it around your heart and soul. And you need to let that badge literally seep into your being because you are the powerful one. And if you remember your own power, you will find that courage and that bravery to go up against somebody that scares the living dickens out of you. And I calmed down and I literally meditated on that idea of the badge that I was, around my neck, seeping into me, giving me that power. And when I went into that room, I came from being this little shaking, I don't know, this guy's so scary. He's like, so, how do I tell him, what's going on? And you know what? I went from there. I literally opened the door and it was as if I became, I don't want to say another character because it was me, but it was as though I don't know, it was like walking through almost this like film of fear, and through it I burst out into this incredibly powerful, strong, and serious version of me. And as you know, I'm not really that serious. So for me, it really took quite a bit for me to get over my fear of literally using my voice to speak to power because I forgot that I was the power myself. And so it worked out. I mean, he yelled at me like crazy. This is just one incident. This was just one moment in time that I remember this insane amount of needing this insane amount of courage. But throughout my experience, I think the time that I needed the most courage when I was at HUD was when I was tapped to become the spokesperson for the National Federation of Federal Employees Union, to be the spokesperson for all the federal employees. Holy cannoli, I was so scared. I was so scared to be the one on stage or the one in front of the camera. Literally, I mean, at the Women's March, I kind of sort of yelled, okay, at President Trump and Senator Mitch McConnell and all those other folks that were causing the government shutdown that I was trying to fight against, right? Principal Anderson, I cried a lot and I had to literally, I mean, I was scared that I was going to get fired. I was scared that I was going to get like punished somehow. I mean, kind of the rules don't apply under this administration. It's crazy that we have it again, but I'm talking about during the 2018-2019 shutdown, which I feel, I don't know, things were actually a little bit better, right? Well, actually, a lot bit better for the federal government workforce under the Trump administration, ironically enough. But to have courage to use your voice to speak to power, I had to grow up.
Mm.
I really had to grow up. I had to stop being that little 12-year-old Jamie and turn into a warrior Jamie. And I don't know how, but I did it.
So can I ask you though, I appreciate that you brought up about the government shutdown. So during that time, what did that experience teach you though about public trust?
It taught me that the more honest I was with the public, the more they resonated with me and trusted me. I literally was myself in front of all those cameras. I didn't lie. I didn't make up any stories. I believe that the public trusts when they truly sense that the person who's speaking to them is genuine, authentic, and honest.
Mm.
And so, even though it was humiliating to me, I mean, honestly, it was so embarrassing for me to go on national or international TV and say, my family are middle class Americans and we can't afford to miss a paycheck. It was true, but that was embarrassing. And I had a GoFundMe because we couldn't even, we were scared we weren't going to make our mortgage payment, which on a condo, we just used every single penny to purchase, like our first home, all the savings, right? Everything's in there. I was embarrassed, but I had to get over myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm not just the only one in this position. I'm literally speaking for the workforce at the time. It was 800,000 employees, and then another million or so federal contractors. Then, if you think about all of those individuals having maybe a spouse, children, and other dependents depending on them, I, I just knew like I had to be the voice for everybody that is like me.
Mm.
But I will tell you, it was embarrassing. But I had to get over my ego. I really did. I had to get over my ego because I really wanted to help. And the public, you know, I feel like we, the public, are manipulated a lot. Okay. We're manipulated by people pretending to be something that they're not. We're manipulated by people telling half truths, right? Fake news, and all kinds of other stuff. And so I decided, you know what? People are only going to listen to me if I'm telling the truth, period.
Mm.
And so I told the truth, even though it was embarrassing to me to say that we can't afford to miss a paycheck. It means that we're not rich, right? Like, you kind of want to have like a reputation, like you've got it together, right? We've got savings, we've got a house. Like you kind of want to have that sort of, and it's because of ego, right? You want to, but here I am, literally. I mean, I felt almost like I was like, I don't want to say this, but almost like naked in front of everyone because I was literally giving the public the truth. And you know what? It worked. It
Yeah.
worked. People became advocates for the federal government employees. People who didn't give a hoot about the government shutdown suddenly gave a hoot about the government shutdown. And it was making changes in Congress. We had folks who didn't care at all who suddenly started to care. And I realized, I think one of my superpowers might be that I can change hearts and minds.
Mm.
Maybe. And that was my first sort of realization that I think I might be able to do that. And I think that that's really cool. But in order to do that, you really have to bare your soul. And I did. I really did.
So that leads me to the next wonder because you shared that you are a mom and all this experience. I'm listening to you going, oh my goodness. Yes, I've known this I've known Jamie since she was a little girl, and I'm thinking of the experience that you've had and the doors you walked through, and then the door of motherhood.
Mm,
So, when you, a fourth grader and a kindergartner, when they
yes.
look at you, what do you hope they learn about your strength? And I've just learned a lot about your strength. So, what do you hope they learn about your strength?
You know, I, I'm I'm kind of nervous because I'm very myself, right, in front of my children, and they've seen me cry,
Oh,
and they've seen me in my weakest moments. But then when I came home from Washington, D.C., and I showed what I did on the big screen at home, right, to my sons, Raphael was still too little at the time, but Samuel, he immediately told me that he thinks I'm a superwoman.
oh.
I said, "Wow, that's a huge compliment coming from your kid who is seeing you at your lowest, honestly." I really hope that what they get from me is that even if you cry, even if you are scared, that doesn't mean that you're weak. In fact, maybe it means that you're even stronger
Yeah.
because you feel it really strong and you can think of all of these scenarios all at once, the good and the bad. And it can be overwhelming, especially for an empathetic person like myself. I really want my boys to know that whether or not you feel weak, right? Like in that moment, it's your choice. And you can overcome that feeling of weakness and be strong if you choose to do so yourself. It is a choice. I always had to, at some point or another, come to a decision to be strong because I could have just fallen to pieces. I could have just fallen to pieces. It's way easier to fall to pieces and just stay in bed and cover your head and say, I'm not going to DC. I'm not, I'm not doing that Women's March speech thing. That's crazy cakes, right? That's scary. Being in front of hundreds of thousands of people and the C-SPAN and all of the other, cameras staring at you and literally yelling at your president.
My goodness. Yeah.
Scary. But I literally, there was a moment in time I remember. I remember this moment where I just decided, and my boys know it. I told them. I always tell them. I look at Sammy and I go, you know what? I decided I'm gonna do this, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna kick butt. We're gonna do this. And
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, you are. You're the best, mom. You're strong. You can do this. Sammy, I think, is he's my cheerleader for sure. Rafi being 5, he's my affectionate Klingon. He loves me like beyond, right? Both of
Yeah.
them do. But Sammy is so wise for his years, I feel. He always says, "You're mentally strong, mom." I'm like, "Wow.
Oh.
Thank you, my 10-year-old." Like even though you just saw me cry, he's like, and I asked him when he told me you're mentally strong, I'm like, "What does that mean to be mentally strong?" He goes, it means that you don't fall apart, like you keep going. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do keep going. And my grandmother kept going. And actually, all of my grandparents kept going. And if you look down the line, all my ancestors kept going. Even though everybody was trying to kill us, they kept on going.
Yeah.
And I looked at my son Samuel and I said, may you always keep on going.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm
So I
getting
think,
emotional because this
no,
is a real moment we had.
that's right. And that's what brings the tears to your eyes is those real moments. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing that. It's okay to show the real you. And I really appreciate that because again, you've gone through so much just being in federal service.
Yeah.
But then the next thing happened, you move forward again, which is where I want to go with this podcast right now is after the years in federal service, you step back into the storytelling as
Yeah.
your central work.
Yeah.
Did you feel brave or that it was inevitable that you would go back to this?
I felt so brave. It was, I never thought. I would get this chance, to be honest. It was this nagging regret that was in like eating me away in my soul. Like honestly, throughout the years of working a very hard, stressful job.
Mhm.
And after that, I was a city official in Indian Wells, and that was an even more hard and stressful job. And constantly, I would look at books. I would read books with my kids or cartoons with my kids or a movie or something. And I would always say, gosh, it must have been so wonderful to make this book. Or wouldn't it be so fun to make cartoons? Like, you know, being in federal service showed me really ugly stuff of humanity, like the ugliness of humanity. For example, you know, not being grateful for somebody who just saved you. You know, I saved people from losing their Section 8 and becoming homeless. And the next thing I know, they start, you know, wanting more or something else. Like, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, can we just be grateful for this moment that you are not going to be homeless? It's
Mhm.
like, well, what does that mean? Next month, da da da. And I'm like, ugh, people are not grateful, you know? And they and other things that would come up. And the more I saw the ugliness in humanity, the more I felt almost like like what I am doing isn't making a difference. Like, yeah, it's making a difference, per person or with the city or something like that. But what I want to do is make a difference for folks inside so that their daily life can be better. And if everybody has a more happy and inner peace, I feel that there will be less depression, less anxiety, less drug addiction, less alcoholism, less numbing, right? Instead of being numb, let's actually feel and let's feel good things. Let's feel being gratitude, like grateful. Like, how does that make you feel? In fact, with my complainants, I literally would tell them, how does it feel that you are now not going to be homeless or whatever the situation is, right? How does it feel now? Or how does it feel that you just got compensated for this awful discrimination that just happened to you? Because I felt like I needed to prompt them to feel the gratitude. And when they felt the gratitude, I felt the relief. I felt the happiness and the joy from within them. And in that moment, I thought, okay, I really helped this person because it wasn't enough for me to just help them with their physical issue. Okay. They needed help inside and here, in here and in here. And what I'm pointing to is my mind, my brain, and my heart. Right. And with my stories, okay, this all started me with this whole storytelling thing with telling bedtime stories to my children.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Bedtime is my favorite time, like of the day ever, any day of the week, all the days of the week,
Mhm.
because it is the only time that I had all of those years for the last, whatever, hundred of years that I was not able to be a storyteller, okay, and write my stories and write my books and, you know, promote these messages and all that stuff. The only time of the day that I got to do that was at bedtime. And when I do bedtime stories for my sons, they're not just meant to be fun and magical and happy. They all have some messages and lessons. Okay. And that's how I teach my boys to like have gratitude and to not be greedy, to not be jealous, to not be lazy, to not be risk averse, to be helpful, to have empathy, all of these things. They're all in my stories. And it's the protagonists or whoever it is, the characters, that the boys are almost like imagining that they are themselves. In fact, most of my stories, my main characters are Sammy and Rafi. I even told them, Sammy and Rafi, da 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 da. So I literally put them into that world and it's almost like a sponge, it's almost subliminal because a lot of times they fall asleep before before the story is over. But every single time I did this, I would leave their bedroom feeling like, I wish I could write this. And
Mm.
in fact, at some point, I started to record myself on my phone because I was like, that was good. Like, why didn't I record myself? I could just like quickly write it down afterwards. So I started recording myself and I started listening to my stories. And I thought, holy cannoli, that's good.
Yeah.
And for me to say something that I do is good is is
Mhm.
is a lot because I'm a very I'm a tough critic on myself. Um, and I wished and wished and I just you have sometimes these secret dreams that you whisper. Like, for example, for many, many years, probably my whole life, whenever, not every time, but sometimes when I walk into a bookstore or I walk into a library, I say or whisper or think, my books are going to be here someday. And
Mhm.
that was before, way before I had this opportunity to start writing books. It was this dream, this vision.
Mhm.
My mom can vouch for me because I've said it so many times in front of her. Like, you know, she's like, mm-hmm. Like she always kind of like looks at me and like, mm-hmm, like that would be nice. Like that would be nice, you know. But I wasn't living a reality where I could write. I didn't
Right.
have the time
Right.
nor the wherewithal to do that. And so for me to then stop being in the government, stop being in law, using my JD, okay, which I mean costs a lot of money and a lot of hardship, right? For me to say, you know what, it's okay. I did that. I did my time. I did that. Now I need to do things that I need to do. Literally, this is the decision point for me was like, I need to do things I need to do before I die
Mm.
that like I will regret if I don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I know that sounds kind of morbid, but especially when there was a moment I broke my foot off of my leg and I had to go into surgery, and I did a vlog, like I did a video message of
Mhm.
that moment in time. And in that video message, I was like, oh my gosh, if I die, like, oh my God, I'm so going to regret that I didn't do the Rex stories. I'm so going to regret that I didn't write The King's Ring. I'm so going to regret that I'm not going to leave these stories for my children and their children. That was my regret. That was the regret. And so when I came out of surgery and I was alive,
Yeah.
I thought, I don't care what I'm up against. I need to write these books. I just do. It's like, some things your soul really, really wants. And sometimes, for whatever reason, we don't listen. We ignore it.
So let's talk about that. The first book, The Fun and Furry Tales of Rex, and then Adoption Day.
Yes.
So tell us about Rex. Why begin in this creative chapter there with Rex?
So when Rex wasn't even one yet, okay, and this moment was caught on video. Actually, I have this moment on video. My ex-husband, but at the time he was my fiance or whatever. Uh,
Mhm.
I had Rex on my lap in the car, and we were waiting for the doggy daycare lady to come because we were going on like an overnight or something. And I'm holding Rex, and I looked at Rex and I said, you know what? I want to teach children lessons from the lessons that Rex learns. Because I think that Rex, I mean, everybody that ever saw Rex in person freaked out over how cute he was. He was just the cutest and the most loving. And children, oh my God, he looked like a teddy bear.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like, first of all, I would get everybody's attention with this cutie pie. And second of all, I mean, he did learn lessons, and I learned lessons through him. I know that sounds kind of strange considering you don't really talk to your dog, but the things that we went through in life, the reason why I started off with Rex is because of a pinky promise that I made to Samuel, my now 10-year-old. This was many moons ago. It was bedtime. This was before Raphael was even born. So Sammy was probably 3. And we were loving on Rex in the bed. And Sammy suddenly asked me, how did we get so lucky to have Rex as our dog? And rather than telling him the story, I said, you know what? Hold on, hold that thought. I grabbed my laptop, opened it up, and I literally clicked on the album of the photos of the day of that I took just because I'm a camera happy photographer
Uh-huh.
of the experience. I open it up and we start clicking through the pictures and I start coming up with a story. I'm literally start talking like the dogs, like, Chunky Monkey, oh, he wanted treats. Little Shy Guy wanted to stay with Steve. But Rex knew from the start that he liked it here, and I started telling this whole story and you could see it. You can see it through the photos, It wasn't like it was like I was narrating, literally narrating the photos, okay? But I was speaking from the perspective of the puppies because I'm cool like that.
Mhm.
I can speak on behalf of animals.
Mhm.
But anyway, Sammy and I laughed and like to tears. It was so cute. It was so funny. And at the end of it, Sammy pops up into bed and he said, Mom, and he shows me his little pinky. You need to pinky promise me that you're going to make this into a real book because I want to read this story over and over again. And I was like, you got it, Sammy. I pinky promise. We kissed, the hand. Like we made, like it was serious business. Ever since that pinky promise, this has been something that was nagging on me big time,
Mm.
especially since Sammy would remind me, did you write the book yet? Did you write the book yet? Did you make the book yet? When I was on a plane ride to Washington, D.C. during the government shutdown, I took my laptop after I wrote my speeches for that. I started looking at the pictures and I started typing. I started writing the story. It was like just coming out of me, like flowing. Like I wasn't in the plane, time didn't exist. It was like the craziest thing. I'd never had that sensation before. And I finished it. By the time we landed, I finished it. This was in 2018, okay? So it wasn't until December 24th, 2024 that this book was finished and published and out in the world, like in reality. It took me that long, literally from the time that this was like 13 years ago when that thought entered my mind, okay, when Rex was on my lap and I said I want to use this guy to teach kids
Mm.
lessons to all right, I made it. I made it. I created it. And to be honest with you, I mean, yeah, I could have started out with an adult book or a fantasy novel, something maybe more intellectual. I have a lot of like nonfiction books I'm working on, sure. But I don't know what it was. This book, I mean, literally, that was the thought that went through my head before the surgery is if I die before I make that damn book, I'm gonna regret it for the rest of my afterlife.
Jamie, I could listen to your journey forever. I mean, what a journey you've had. I didn't realize all this about you, so much of your journey. So when you, and I know you do, reflect on your journey, because it's been a great one, so much learned. When you reflect on that journey, your journey that has not stopped,
Yeah.
because now you have stories by Jamie, and I have to come to one of your book reads one
Yes.
day.
It's so
But
much fun.
but when you reflect on that journey, and again, my head is spinning because again, knowing you from a little girl to all that part of your journey with the federal government and so on, and now writing these books, my goodness, I'm sure the listeners are going, wow. But as you reflect on it, what does moving forward mean to you?
Ironically enough, okay, moving forward, in order for me to move forward and literally completely change my life, completely change my entire reality, my whole daily existence, and, um, paradigm or what have you, the reality, right, that we live in. Um, in order for me to move forward, ironically enough, I had to come back. I had to remember who I am.
Mm.
I had to remember who I was as a child, because who we are as
Mm.
children is a very mm, pure, okay, a very pure sort of essence of who we are. Because as children, we may not know everything or anything at all, but we know what we like, we know what we want, and it's an uninhibited thing, right? Unfortunately for me, because of circumstances and whatever, I became a people pleaser, like
Mm.
big time people pleaser.
Mm.
And so if my parents said that they were not pleased with me if I did what I wanted to do, I didn't do it because I wanted my parents to be proud of me and
Mm.
to be happy with me. And for some reason, I wanted their happiness over my own. And that ended up leading me completely off my path because rather than, and this isn't any kind of criticism on my parents. My parents are amazing. I'm very, very grateful. I, this is kind of for all parents, and I have to be careful of this myself, okay? Because I do it. I check myself before I wreck myself, okay?
Mm.
But we parents, sometimes we push upon things on our children because either we want to, on some level, live vicariously through them, okay? Or we somehow receive like a sense of identity, reputation, and, a value from what our children do. So I think that this is very common for parents where they're like, well, you're embarrassing me, okay, by becoming a whatever it is that embarrasses them. In for me, it was acting. I really wanted to be an actress. And in fact, I still do. Because I am. I am who I am. I'm a performer.
Hey.
And ironically enough, I was in my dad's wedding and special occasions band from the time I was 13 until I was 19 as a singer. I was a classically trained pianist. And you know this, you probably heard me play for Elise a
Mhm.
million times
Yes.
in talent shows at Olivera. Um, and so I grew up being a performer, but for some reason, my parents, and I know the reason, because they were scared. They were scared it was not stable, that it's not secure. You don't get that drip drip of that constant salary, okay? Like, and not everybody makes it, right? Only one in a million, all of this stuff, right? So I myself have to be very careful because yeah, I kind of sort of sometimes do the same thing with my kids where it's like, well, I don't know if being on YouTube is something that my son should do because I think I'm going to be criticized as a mother for it. Because people are like, oh, he's only 10. Don't you know that there's like weirdos out there and all of that stuff? And it's almost like, people are criticizing you, right? And I feel very strongly that my parents had a lot of that. And so, my parents wanted me and my brother to be successful and secure and safe. So
Mhm.
what they did was not bad. It wasn't like a bad thing, okay? But it wasn't necessarily the right thing either. I
Mhm.
feel very strongly that we as parents need to guide our children to become the best versions of who they are, not who we want them to be or who we hope that they will become, okay? But who they are. And for me, I forgot who I am because I played a character as a federal investigator, as a lawyer, as a city official. I'm not an argumentative person, okay?
Mm-mm.
And I literally went to school to become a professional arguer, which I didn't put two and two together at the time. But I hate arguing. I actually hate arguing.
Yeah.
And I went to school to become a professional arguer. So it was really unaligned. It was totally unaligned. But I listened so much to the priorities and preferences of others that I completely ignored my own preferences. And so literally when I came I came back home. So moving forward meant literally coming back.
Yeah.
Okay. I came back home and I started to read books like 369 Consciousness, like trying to and I had I had to listen to apps called Sync Tuition where it teaches you how to listen to your intuition because I literally I couldn't hear my intuition because I had literally ignored it all of these years. So it took a minute. It took a minute. It wasn't immediate. There was a minute of like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to quit doing that and I'm going to be an author. It wasn't like that.
Mm.
It really came about from a lot of soul searching and then remembering. And what helped me remember the most was literally when I came upon this book that is an anthology and it's the National Library of Poetry, okay, A View from Afar. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's right. I was a poet and I know it."
Yeah.
you know and I read the poem and then I started to find my journals and I started reading my journals, and in my journals it's and then the best part was I got a letter from myself when I was 16 from high school that my biology teacher sent us. It was like a thing.
Wow.
I got this letter. It was like divine timing or something because I was lost, and suddenly I'm reading a letter from, I think it was 16-year-old Jamie. And do you know what 16-year-old Jamie was saying?
Mm.
How many books have you written?
Oh my goodness.
How many books have you written, Jamie, from the future? Literally. And I was like, oh my God. And it just like clicked. And that was it. That was the moment.
Your story, and I hope listeners are under hearing this like I am, is so part of this whole title of this podcast. I mean, you have moved through every part of your life, your journey, and I'm going to keep following you because I can't wait to see where it goes next.
Me too.
So
I have no idea.
yeah, but Jamie, I cannot thank you enough. I want to tell you what stands out to me in your journey is integration. You did not abandon storytelling to serve justice. You did not abandon strength to become a mother. And you did not abandon credibility to embrace creativity. What you did is you wove them together. Um, from your grandmother's stories to federal investigation that protected families to standing on national platforms with composure and clarity to raising two young boys while building something imaginative and new. What your life actually reminds us that leadership can be both steady, and let me pull out this word, and soulful. That public service and personal story legacy are not separate. They're not separate paths.
Hmm.
They are threads. Oh my goodness, definitely threads of the same story. I hope that resonates through you because
It
they
does.
are. And perhaps the most powerful though is moving forward does not always mean reinventing yourself. Sometimes it means returning. Returning where? Returning to your voice, returning to your roots, and returning to the part of you that knew, even at 12 years old, that stories matter. To our listeners, if today's conversation stirred something in you, which it definitely did in me, if you're balancing leadership and family, if you feel the quiet callback to a dream you once set aside, may Jamie's story, Jamie's journey, remind you that strength and imagination can coexist. Let me say that again. Strength and imagination can coexist. That credibility and creativity belong together. They belong together, and that it's never too late to write a new chapter. So until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for honoring your story. Stories by Jamie. Look it up, everybody. It's going to be awesome as it keeps moving forward.